In this presentation, we'll look at using stories to teach language in the primary ELT classroom, but also as a springboard to broader topics and life skills, including critical thinking, CLIL, and CEL. So I'm very happy to read that you love stories. Very, very happy. All right. And well, yeah, everybody loves stories, exactly. Hello, Ukraine, Slovakia. Very nice. A lot of people. Hello, Moscow, Peru, Mexico, Georgia. Hi, Turkey, Argentina, Palestine, Oman, Romania, Estonia, Venezuela, Uruguay. Hello, everybody. A lot of people from lots of different lovely countries. And well, let me introduce today's speaker. So, well, after some years spent traveling and teaching English, Viv Lambert worked in publishing, editing, and commissioning children's books and primary EFL materials. She now works for her from her home near Oxford as a freelance author, specializing in primary ELT. She has written and co-written a wide variety of primary courses, including Story Central. Many people know Story Central, right, from Macmillan. Viv has also taught French at her local primary school and been involved in teaching training in Oxford. Her hobbies include tennis, yoga, and open water swimming, and she has a lovely dog, as I know. Hi, Vivian, how are you?
Hi, Yadza. Yes, very well, thank you. How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful here in Mexico City. Nice weather, by the way.
Oh, good. It's really cold here, really cold.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, well, they're all yours. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. See you later. Hello, everyone. It's great to see so many people joining from all over the world. Quite overwhelming, actually, because I do feel as if I've been in hibernation for the last year, as I'm sure a lot of people do. So yeah, it's great to have this contact, albeit through a screen, with so many of you from all around the world in these days when we can no longer travel. So I hope you're all safe and well, and that you can see me and hear me, or hear me. You don't really need to see me because I'm going to be showing you lots of lovely slides. I'm Viv, and I'm going to talk to you about putting stories at the heart of learning in the primary classroom. This is a passion of mine. Stories are powerful things. They can transport us to different worlds, and they can connect us. They can offer escape, and they can offer comfort and reassurance. Putting stories at the heart of your lessons can really inspire your learners' imagination and creativity. Today, we're going to look at the power of stories and some of the ways that we can use them in the young learner classroom. Stories offer so many opportunities to develop literacy, language, and much, much more. Everybody loves a story, and as soon as you say, I've got a story to tell you, people pay attention, they listen, they lean in, they want to know what happened. Stories are everywhere, in books, in the news, on social media, and we're all storytellers. Every time we or our children tell a personal anecdote about the dog running away or what happened in maths class today, they're telling a story. It feels like a different world since we wrote Story Central first edition, but many stories are timeless. And revisiting them now, I found they have different meaning and even more resonance, so they feel new every time you read them. I don't know about you, but I've turned to stories more than ever this past year. I've read lots of books, but I've also really appreciated the limited time I've had with friends and family, sharing stories of our lives in lockdown. So storytelling is a shared experience and a really important form of communication today. So in this presentation, I'm going to look at using stories in the classroom for literacy, to teach language in context, and for exam preparation, but also as a springboard to broader topics and life skills, including CLIL and CEL. So that's content and language integrated learning and social and emotional learning, not forgetting cultural awareness. And I'm going to be using some examples of stories from Story Central Plus. Let's start with literacy and this quote from Dr. Seuss. The more that you read, the more things you will know. The more that you learn, the more places you'll go. Being able to read and write is an absolutely essential part of a child's education. They need it so they can understand information and communicate knowledge. You may have read Stephen Krashen and his book, The Power of Reading. He said, when children read, they acquire involuntarily and without conscious effort all of the language skills many people are so concerned about. When we read, we really have no choice. We must develop literacy. So some language is acquired almost accidentally through reading. And the knock-on effect of this is better speaking, better writing and spelling. And we know that keen readers do better in all subjects, not just literacy. So reading really is empowering, and Dr. Seuss's quote sums this up. There's some lovely quotes coming here in the chat box too. I read, therefore I am. I like that one. And hello everybody who's still just joining. We're talking about the power of stories, and we're going to start off with language in context now. So why do we use stories in the language classroom? You all said before we started that many of you do use stories already in the classroom. So I think the first answer, or one answer, is here on the page because, sorry, just waiting for my slide to appear, because they provide language in context. Other ideas coming up here in the chat box to improve 4 skills, that's right. It's effective to young minds. Context and engagement, collaborative learning. Yes, there's some great ideas here. And what about just for fun? Children like stories, so you've got their attention from the start. Language is presented within a motivating context, so they listen with purpose. And pictures in a book are visual clues to vocabulary and meaning. If you're telling a story orally, you'll probably use gestures and mime that help with meaning too. Grammar and vocabulary come to life in the context of a story, so they're easier to understand and more memorable. So how do we approach storytelling in the classroom? It can be a bit daunting to jump in at the deep end and read a story aloud from start to finish in English without preparation. But I do think it's worth a try from time to time. You might be surprised how much children do understand with the support of pictures, your voice and gestures, or audio and sound effects. But most teachers, whether consciously or not, use scaffolding to support learners in stages, to take them from what they know now to higher levels of understanding. This photo shows my co-author, Mo Choi, and me in Japan presenting a story in a scaffolded way. We started off by arousing interest in the story, showing the cover and getting them to predict what it was about. We asked them to look at the cover and the title. It's called The Magic Violin. What do you think this story is about? Can you predict? The Magic Violin. It's about a violin, music, beauty of music, okay, love for music, a little girl, harmonic violin, okay, lots of lovely ideas there. So once we got them to predict what the story was about, we found out what vocabulary and grammar children already knew, so activating language. We brainstormed animals and actions, and we pre-taught some new language using flashcards and mime. Can you guess what the vocabulary and grammar for this story is? Well, the vocabulary is fairly clear there. Animals, action verbs, modals, ability, you've got it. So the next stage was to get the children to engage with the story by reading it aloud or playing the audio and getting them to join in with actions or repeated lines. This story is about a man named Tim who has a magic violin, and when he plays it, all kinds of amazing things happen. Fish can't fly. Don't be silly, Tim. Oh, yes, they can when I play my violin. The story has rhythm and rhyming verses similar to many children's nursery rhymes. So it's easier for children to start to join in and engage with the story as they go through. So at number 3, we've got engaging with the story here in this scaffolding tower. Whizzing up the tower, by the time we got to stage 5, we've checked comprehension, and children are starting to use the language confidently to retell it. You can see them posing here with their props. Without spending much time presenting vocabulary or grammar, the children had acquired new language almost by accident in the context of the story. From stage 6, analyse and evaluate, we're starting to reflect on the story at a deeper level, going beyond comprehension, using higher order thinking skills. This is where we get into the realms of critical thinking. And then in the roof here at the top of the tower, extend and create, this relates to CLIL projects, personalisation and creative activities where learners are starting to generate language for themselves. We're going to look at these areas in more detail a bit later. When you're looking for stories to use with your classes, look for stories that are at the right level linguistically, obviously, and cognitively. Think about the language you want to focus on, but also about the potential to go further up the tower, beyond comprehension. We sometimes hear teachers say, but we don't have time for stories, we have exams to prepare for. Look at this page from the Cambridge Young Learners Movers Speaking Exam. What can you see? Yeah, it's a story. It's a story. So a quick glance through the Cambridge Young Learners exams, I found no fewer than 10 references to stories. Starters, reading and writing part 5. There are pictures and story questions to answer. In Movers, reading and writing part 3, there's a story gap fill and they have to choose a title. Both movers and flyers speaking activities have story pictures, and students tell a story, as you see here. The new flyers exam, reading and writing, part 7, has them write a short story. You can help learners enormously by sharing a variety of stories with them, different genres like true stories, mysteries, fables, adventures, and so on. If they understand the conventions of storytelling, so having a beginning, a middle, and an end, thinking about the title, the setting, the characters, and the order of events, they'll be better prepared for these parts of the exam. When you're choosing stories for the language classroom, whether they're from your course book or graded readers or real books, it's good to include a wide variety because different topics and genres appeal to different people. If a child says they don't like reading, perhaps they just haven't found the right book. And look for stories with illustrations, repetition, or rhyme. Don't forget, there are different ways of accessing stories too. Books, magazines, comics, audio, video, film, and of course, there's loads of reading material we can access digitally. Let's talk briefly about stories in the digital world. What's this family doing? They may be using social media, chatting online, playing games, but they're probably reading too. Even possibly reading an ebook, but even when they're playing games or using the internet, they're probably reading too. We're always asking ourselves whether children have too much screen time. But in the past year, we've seen a lot of classes being taught through Zoom, Teams, and other video support. I don't know if you've been teaching from the comfort of your homes via a screen, but we've all had to learn new ways of teaching and learning, even exercising and socializing too. Sorry, that is my dog who's just woken up under the desk, so please excuse the groaning noises, the sound effects. So yes, we in the UK, our schools are closed, so everybody's teaching via Zoom or Teams. Thank you for the nice doggy comments. He'll probably pop up again later. So blended learning with online and face-to-face teaching has been a lifeline for schools this past year. I've spoken to teachers who, although they miss the classroom desperately, have admitted to some advantages of online teaching. They found it easier in some ways to be inclusive. It's good for personalised feedback and maybe easier to cater for mixed abilities by giving different work to different children. This is all provided they have access to a computer and good internet, of course. I've heard about grandparents recently who are reading bedtime stories to their grandchildren through video calls as a way of keeping in touch. But having said all that, we're all getting a little bit tired of staring at the screens, and there is a risk of information overload. This is where critical thinking comes in, an important 21st century skill. So the issue today isn't getting information, it's how to navigate through the maze of material that's out there. Critical literacy involves getting children to question the information they read. Ask questions like, who wrote it? What was their perspective? When did they write it? Why did they write it? And is it fact or opinion? This will help them to analyse and evaluate the information around them. Let's look at a story. Don't worry about trying to read the text, you don't need to. It's just for you to have an idea of the content of the story. So this story is called An Unusual Friendship. It's a true story about an orphaned baby elephant. One day in South Africa, a baby elephant was wandering alone. It was an orphan. Its mother had died. The baby was only 6 months old, and young elephants need their mother's milk for 2 years. Elephants are interesting animals. And so the story goes on. The elephant is rescued, thankfully, and named Temba. A gamekeeper who thinks Temba might be lonely introduces her to a sheep called Albert. At first, Albert was shy and Temba wasn't interested in having a friend. But you can see what happens in the end. Just look at the picture in the bottom right. We can use this story to think about fact versus opinion. Have a look at these sentences from the story and decide whether they are facts or opinions. Remember, you have to be able to absolutely prove that something is correct for it to be a fact. So let's do this together. Fact or opinion? Number 1, young elephants need their mother's milk for 2 years. Yes, it's a fact. Number 2, elephants are interesting animals. That's right, it's an opinion. Number 3, elephants are social animals and live in herds in the wild. That's right. Number 3 is a fact. Number 4, the situation was getting worse. And number 5, Temba the elephant was happier now. Yep, the last 2 are opinion. If we can distinguish between fact and opinion, we can evaluate what we read, and children will get used to questioning whether something is universally true or does it just express the writer's particular opinion. As adults, we use this all the time without realizing it when we read the newspapers or when we read something online. We question it naturally, but encouraging children to start doing this at a very simple level is going to help them to analyse and evaluate things they read as they grow older. In another story, The Town and Country Mouse, I'm sure you all know this fable. The 2 mice live in very different places and they have different lifestyles. The town mouse loves the busy town and all it has to offer, but the country mouse doesn't enjoy his visit to town. He likes a simpler life surrounded by nature and flowers and animals. These phrases from the story all describe the same place. They all talk about the town. But whose perspective do they show? The town mouse or the country mouse? Let's have a look. Number 1, life is so exciting in the town. Who do you think has this perspective? Yes, the town mouse. It's noisy and scary. The country mouse thinks it's noisy and scary. I don't like it in the town. It's the country mouse. Number 4, there are lots of things to do. The town mouse. And the town is dangerous. It's the country mouse. So asking who wrote something and whose point of view it expresses helps learners understand just because they read it somewhere doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. They start to recognise bias and that something may have been written for a purpose, like to influence the reader. How would you describe life in a busy town? Is it exciting and fun and fabulous? Is it too noisy and scary? Are you a town mouse or a country mouse? And maybe your opinion has changed over the last year. I know here in the UK, a lot of people have found that the cities and the big towns have not been so appealing recently, and they're all flocking to the countryside. I've got lots of people here, some town mice and some country mice here in the chat box. So these two mice are talking about the same thing, the town, but they're giving their different perspectives. When you're looking for stories to use with your classes, think about critical literacy. What activities can you use with the stories, like predicting or personalising, evaluating, fact or opinion, points of view, all that kind of thing. Lots of lovely comments coming in about the town and the countryside. Some people like both. So stories are an excellent springboard for CLIL activities too. Non-fiction and true stories may be the most obvious places to look for content, but a lot of fictional stories also have loads of content and world knowledge. In An Unusual Friendship, we learnt about baby elephants and their needs. But even folk tales usually include some factual elements. The folk tale you see here is about a giraffe. At the beginning of the story, the giraffe has a short neck and can only reach the brown leaves at the bottom of the tree. He asks the other animals to help, but they can't. Then he drinks a magic potion and his neck grows really long. Whoa, my neck, he says, and he reaches up to the green leaves at the top of the tree, which he then shares with the other animals. This kind of folktale can be a trigger for further reading and research into CLIL topics like science and geography. Here they could research adaptation, animal habitats and food. You can see there's a text here on this CLIL page about what animals eat and a simple carnivore or herbivore activity in the Venn diagram at the bottom of the page. Here's another example. Do you recognise this story? The title isn't there purposefully. Yes, it's Jack and the Beanstalk, that's right. And can you see the CLIL idea beside it? How to grow a beanstalk? So these examples are from Story Central Plus, but when you're looking for stories to use with your classes, think about whether they lend themselves to extension or projects based around other curriculum subjects like maths or science, geography, history and art. Moving on to the next button on my mind map, cell. The infographic you see here is based on the CASEL 5. The aim is to make social and emotional learning, or CEL, an integral part of learning. CEL teaches children to recognise their emotions and manage their behaviour. It encourages them to set goals and measure their progress. This diagram shows the 5 key areas. Self-management. So managing emotions, controlling impulses and setting goals. Responsible decision-making. This includes thinking about the consequences of your actions. Moving round, there's relationship skills like communication, cooperation, and conflict resolution. Social awareness. This might include seeing things from other people's perspective, showing empathy, and maybe appreciating differences and diversity And then finally, self-awareness. Things like identifying emotions, recognizing strengths and needs, and developing a growth mindset. I think we've all become more aware of the need to nurture children's emotional intelligence recently. It's impossible to shelter them from the news, and they're likely to pick up on stress or anxiety around them. They may be dealing with homeschooling, missing the company of friends, and these social interactions are really important in helping them grow into mentally healthy individuals. They may be feeling anxious or isolated and unsure at the moment. We all are. Once again, stories to the rescue. Stories can offer escape and a window to other worlds. They can also act as mirrors and reflect familiar situations and offer solutions. Storytelling builds empathy. We can put ourselves in someone else's shoes. We can tackle sensitive issues through stories, things that might be difficult to approach more directly, like bullying, loneliness, or feeling different. Yes, you agree, don't you, Rafa? Sorry, that was my dog just agreeing with what I say. He always does. In this story, The Princess and the Teddy Bear, the king and queen decide that Princess Polly is too old to have a teddy bear, and they give it away with some other toys. The princess has a temper tantrum. "My teddy bear is my favourite toy," she wails. She puts up posters around the town to try to find her teddy. When she finds out it's been given to Daisy, a poor young girl in the town, she changes her mind. She sees that the teddy bear now means more to Daisy than it does to herself. There are a number of ways in which we can use this story to explore CEL, like managing emotions. Look at Princess Polly's temper tantrum she has at the beginning, and understanding another person's perspective, empathizing with others, including those from a different background, like the princess did with Daisy. But it's not always obvious how to approach social and emotional learning in English with young learners. The language and the vocabulary tends to be higher level than they can manage, and we may need to resort to L1 or the mother tongue to talk about feelings. But I think it's worth teaching perhaps a few useful adjectives up front in English, even if they are above level. Some words that they'll use again and again, perhaps using emojis that are so familiar to everyone these days, or even worth having them as a poster on the classroom wall, so children get used to talking about their feelings in English. So maybe something like this. I've just chosen 8 words here, but they're quite useful words they can use again and again, and you can add to these. So I've got happy, sad, bored, excited, worried, proud, sorry or upset, and angry. So here's a little activity for you to do using this story. You can put your answers in the chat box. You don't know the story very well, but I'll just talk you through the pictures. So the first picture shows Princess Polly at the beginning when her toys are taken away. The second picture from the middle of the story is when she's out making posters to try to find her teddy bear. And the last picture is where she's decided to give the toy away to Daisy. So yes, I've got, how does she feel at the beginning? You're all way ahead of me. How does she feel in the middle? And how does she feel at the end? Angry at the beginning, maybe, sorry or upset in the middle, happy at the end. Okay. And perhaps taking it a step forward, a step further, would be to ask why. It's quite important to ask, why does she feel this way? And this is where perhaps you would have to go into L1, because I think she starts to see things from somebody else's perspective. And you might also ask, how does the little girl Daisy feel? In the students' book, we have this activity: draw something to give to Daisy, because we didn't have the language to think about it, to ask anything specific about how she felt and why she felt that way. But the simple activity of asking them to draw something of their own to give to Daisy gets the learners to imagine themselves in Princess Polly's situation. So they have to think about perhaps a toy that's important to them, something that they love. And it requires empathy to imagine what Daisy might like and what's important to her. So they draw a simple picture of one of their own toys, but there's a lot of thought that goes into it and a lot of empathy involved. So there are ways of approaching CEL and doing simple, linguistically simple activities to approach these issues. Do you know this story? It's a Greek myth, the story of Icarus, the boy who flew too close to the sun. "I've made wings so that we can fly home to Athens," says his father, Daedalus. They practice flying together. "Don't fly too low over the sea, or the feathers will become wet and heavy. Don't fly too high, or the sun will melt your wings." Icarus enjoyed flying. It was easy. He saw birds in the sky and wanted to fly as high as them. "Don't fly too close to the sun," said his father. We all know what happens at the end of this story. You can see the last picture there on the right. So what ideas do you think you could explore here to develop social and emotional learning? Elicit the lesson from the story, obedience, values. I'm seeing a lot of things coming. Imprudent move, yes. Balancing consequences, absolutely. You've got it. So here are some ideas. We could ask how Icarus feels at different stages of the story. So you can see him on the left. I think he seems to look excited at the beginning, happy when he's flying, worried when he realizes he's done something wrong. And then when he's falling down, I think he looks quite scared. And how does his father feel? The 4 pictures there show different emotions that his father feels throughout the story. So the first 2 questions get them to identify emotions and their effect on others. Self-awareness and relationship skills are involved here. But the last one, think of a different ending. Oh, I'm so sorry, I am on the wrong slide. I think I jumped ahead. There, sorry. So yeah, I'll just recap. The first one, how does Icarus feel? These 4 little pictures show him at different stages throughout the story. How does his father feel? And then finally, think of a different ending. This relates to responsible decision making or thinking about the consequences of your behavior. So self-management and controlling impulses. So when you choose stories, think about how you can exploit them to develop learners' social and emotional intelligence too. Stories are full of opportunities. So I'm sorry I was whizzed ahead, but I was going to show you this one next when we talk about cultural awareness, although I think the Icarus story we could have also used for the same purpose. So this is the final topic from my mind map, cultural awareness. Although it relates to CEL because it is a part of social awareness and empathy, appreciating difference and diversity, I've given this its own slide because I think intercultural understanding is such an important issue in our globalized world. When we use stories from different cultures, we're inviting readers to find similarities and recognize differences in each other's cultures, beliefs, traditions, and so on. In this story, The Best Food in the World, two brothers who've become chefs in New York and Paris come home and compete to cook the best dinner in the world for their mother and sister. They make an exquisite fish curry and a fancy dessert to try and impress them. But in the end, they're all still hungry. Their sister makes a simple homemade rice pudding, which they all agree is the best food in the world. In this frame from the story, you can see examples of the clothes, the food and the home of the characters. We hear their names in the story and we learn some aspects of family culture in India. The visual style of this story also picks up on traditional art and patterns from the country. So a lot of stories have opportunities to explore world cultures, and folk tales often give background to some cultural beliefs. So again, when choosing stories for your classroom, look for examples from around the world that are a window on different cultures. I'm going to show you my mind map again, my heart map, because we've touched on all of these things now. When you're choosing stories for the language classroom, remember through literacy, they may learn language by accident. So expose your learners to a variety of different genres, different materials. Language in context, look for stories that are the right level, so they present the language you want to teach in context. Exams, bear in mind the activities they might be required to do in exams. And then think about how you can use stories for critical literacy, like analysing and evaluating, fact and opinion, understanding perspective, and so on. Choose stories that lend themselves to extension or CLIL projects based around other subjects like maths or science, geography, history, and art. Look for opportunities to develop their social and emotional intelligence too. And if you do all the above, you're bound to include stories from other cultures, stories from around the world that show glimpses of different cultures. I'd like to end by showing you one of my favourite stories from Story Central Plus. This is from level 6, so the language is a bit higher here, and I've got a little activity for you to do. Again, don't worry about reading the text, just look at the pictures. This story is about a young African man called Amazu, who's been studying abroad. He comes back to his village after many years in America to take on his father's role as leader of the village. He can't sleep at night because of the frogs croaking outside. "If they don't stop making that noise, I won't get any sleep," he says. One morning he asks a village elder, "Please kill the frogs." "If you harm the frogs, bad things will happen to the village," says the old man. "The snakes will be hungry and there will be more insects." If you kill the frogs, I'll pay you well, says Amazu. Here in the top left picture, you can see the villagers catching the frogs to kill them. After a few quiet nights, Amazu is woken by a buzzing noise. Mosquitoes! If those mosquitoes don't stop, I'll be covered in spots, says Amazu. Okay, so who picked up on the grammar from this story? Any ideas? If clauses, that's right, first conditionals. Conditionals, well done. And what CLIL topics could you extend to? What other curriculum areas do you think you could lead to? Okay, I've got health, biology, science, ecology, how everything is connected, and I've got food chains even. Next question. How could you use this story for CEL, social and emotional learning? Any ideas? Okay, we've got environmental awareness, empathy, respect, individualism. Okay, controlling impulses, responsible decision making, thinking about consequences of your actions, perhaps. And finally, how does it raise cultural awareness or intercultural awareness? What do you see here that you could draw on to present intercultural awareness? Where's the story set? Okay, life in Africa, the clothes, the colours, the costumes, the weather, the names even. Okay, I've still got loads of ideas coming in for CEL. And of course, there are lots of ideas for cultural awareness too. Brilliant, thank you. You've all contributed loads of ideas. So I think I'm drawing to a close here. That's pretty much my time up. So yeah, just to finish, I wanted to say that there are so many stories out there, and we all have our own unique and incredible stories to tell. So don't forget to encourage learners to share their stories too, and listen to their stories. I hope you enjoyed the session and you can go away with some ideas for how to put stories at the heart of your lessons. Though I'm sure you've had lots of ideas of your own too. I'm here for a little bit longer if there are questions, and I hope I'll be able to answer them. I tried looking at the chat box as I spoke, so I answered a few questions along the way, but I think we might have a few minutes more if anyone has any other questions. Thank you everyone for your lovely kind comments. It's
Hi,
really
Viv.
exciting to see you all popping up there. Hi, here's the answer. Hi. Oh, he's gone away again. He's coming back in a minute. Okay, so well, all these stories that I used were from Story Central Plus, which is the new edition. I think everything's online as well. All the stories are available digitally if any of you are at home. In fact, I'm intrigued to know if you're going into schools, or are you all based at home too in your countries? You're at home, at school, online. Yeah, a bit of a mixture. Yeah. So it's quite important to be able to have access to these stories online so you can show them. Yep, strict lockdown. Oh dear, it's terrible. I think you're doing a great job, you teachers out there, in these difficult times.
Hi, Viv, can you hear me?
Zoom teaching. So yes, I think I can hear you, yes.
Oh yeah, great.
Can you hear me?
There were a lot of questions about the stories. They wanted to know where they can find these stories.
Well, they're all the ones I used are from Story Central. Levels 1 and 2, levels 5 and 6. So and Story Central has a little reader that goes with it. So if you want just stories, they're all in the reader, and I believe they're all available digitally as well.
Exactly.
So yeah. And
I
think, you know, there are a lot of
yeah.
We've got readers and real books as well, but the ones I used today were taken from Story Central. Sorry, Jens, there's a bit of a time delay, I think.
Yeah, don't worry. Yeah. There was another question about, can we do it with adults as well?
I think you can. I'm not an expert. I do specialize in primary, but I have taught adults, and I think you can definitely do it if you choose the right book. The only thing I would say is that a lot of my examples are based on highly illustrated books. So I think you might have to tackle things slightly differently if they're text-based. Sorry, the dog's just agreeing with you there. But yeah, but I'm really definitely focused on primary here, but you know, all the way up to sort of 11, 12 years old. And I think you can adapt it to adults as well, but I would still like to have access to some visuals, I must say.
All right, there's another question here. Do students prefer classical or modern stories for you?
I think it's nice to have a mixture. I think I even noticed when I pulled together my presentation that I chose things that I like because I love stories about animals, and we've got quite a few others in Story Central. You know, we've got some science fiction and historical. We've got one about the Titanic, you know, which is based on a kind of historical novel. So I did kind of pick the ones I like, and then I realized afterwards that maybe they tend to be traditional updated folk tales and tales about animals and things, because I think that's my personal preference. But there are lots of other genres as well, and we did try to include a big mix, you know, to appeal to boys and girls, and to appeal to different interests as well.
Yeah, there's another question here asking about collaborative story writing in your classes, and if the ideas come from the students.
Yes, I've been focusing as well on more the kind of receptive and the language teaching, but writing, I think it could have been another button on my mind map, you know, moving on beyond kind of reading and understanding to actually producing and creating. So the productive skills of speaking or acting out, and also writing, is certainly a brilliant, stories are a brilliant springboard for this kind of work. I just didn't really have time to cover everything, but I think writing is a really challenging thing as well. But with scaffolding, again, we can stage how our expectations really, and get children to start with very simple stories, and just recognizing the story conventions or the structure of stories, having a beginning, middle and end, and just break it down into manageable chunks for them, and not trying to be too ambitious. I mean, the stories I looked at, even in the movers and flyers exams, I mean, they're not really stories, you know, they're in flyers, they have to write a story, but it's 20 words. And I think, you know, you could say, well, that's not a story, but it's a start, you know, it's an attempt at a story. It's got to have some kind of structure and something has to happen. So I think just not to be too ambitious, and to just grade and stage and scaffold what we're expecting them to do. And then certainly writing and collaborative writing is a great thing to do off the back of reading stories and understanding stories. It is another area I can certainly add to that map, but I think it could go on and on forever, my mind map, and because you know, the story could just be the center of everything, you know. Throw away your course books,
Of
use
course.
stories. I shouldn't
The
say
starting
that.
point.
I shouldn't say that, but exactly.
Yeah, you should. Talking about scaffolding.
Yeah.
Talking about scaffolding, there's another one that says, could you explain scaffolding to storytelling?
Well, I've done another talk on that in the past, which you may be able to find. In this talk, I just pulled out a few stages of that hour. I don't know if I can go back. Let me just quickly go back. And I mean, the theory of scaffolding is that you support children's learning as and when they need it. So if they need help and support, you provide it. But when they're freely moving ahead, you sort of pull back. And it's a big buzzword, but good teachers, well, I'm sure all of you out there do this anyway. You sense when you need to give support, and you sense when you can pull back and you don't need to give so much support. So it's really about just staging how you present. But again, I have another theory as well, which is that we could just read the whole story with pictures and audio and perhaps gesture or mime or video even, and find out, see how it works, see if they understand. And that's almost the opposite of scaffolding. I think it's quite fun to just sometimes try that, but to help and support and structure your storytelling, story reading, it's very helpful to have a kind of scaffolding structure. And the idea is that you're taking students from their starting point and what they know already, and drawing on what they know already, and then building on that, gradually supporting them as you go, until you can set them free, if you like, in the roof there, set them free to get to do their own learning and their own work.
Well, great. Thank you very much. Well, it's been an amazing session. We're very happy to hear all your ideas and everything related to how to work with stories, and a lot of participations. They love your dog. That's what they say a lot, and they love the stories too.
Thank you so much. I've had so many positive comments, and yeah, really kind of you to put up with the background noises. I thought I'd better tell you what it was in case you thought it was my tummy rumbling, but we've had lunch already, so.
He was paying attention. He was agreeing or disagreeing.
He was. Now they did this. I did this talk this morning, and they insisted on having a picture, so I have to. I can't get him out because he's too old and he won't come out. But I can show you a picture.
Yeah, they want to see your dog. Okay. Exactly.
Are you all happy? Are you all happy now?
Yeah. Awesome. They will all remember your dog now. So cute. Yeah.
Yeah,
lovely.
Rafa, that's Rafa.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, it's been amazing. All positive comments. So I really thank you.